Hi, my name is Leo McPhee, and I'm here with Robert Simmons from Heaven and Earth, who's also the author of the Book of Stones, Stones of the New Consciousness, and a number of other books as well.
Moldavite, Starborn Stone of Transformation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're here today to talk about a really interesting story about this stone, Rosophia. So Robert, I want to really hear, how did you come upon this stone and wind up writing about its energies and things like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is different. The story about this stone is pretty different because this is one of the few stones. There's several, but this is the first one that I actually, you might say, discovered myself, and it was quite a synchronicity that led me to it. To try to condense the story, I'll just tell you. In 2008, my wife and I, Kathy and I, had been invited to speak at something called the Rosophia conference it was in New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and they had us. They had me speaking about the topic of stones and the new consciousness. The conference was about a new consciousness, a new body, and a new earth. It was all very forward-looking in a spiritual sense.
Yes.
And so they gave me this topic of stones and the new consciousness. And I was trying to figure out, well, what would that be? What would the new consciousness be like, and what's its relationship to stones? And what is its relationship, if any, to Sophia, which is the ancient Greek word for wisdom, and it also refers to the soul of the world. So a lover of Sophia in Greece was a philosopher. Philo meant to love, and the other side of the word was Sophia's name. So a lover of wisdom or a lover of the soul of the world was a philosopher.
Interesting.
So the Sophia conference was all about that,
right,
and dedicated to the soul of the world. So I had a lot of things going on in my head as I was trying to prepare to talk about this, and I had two dreams during that time as I was preparing, in which I was, in a sense, connected to the soul of the world, or to Sophia. She appeared in a human-like form and kind of offered what I might call blessing. And I won't tell that whole story here because that's a long story and it's in a couple of my books.
Right.
But I will say this, I got to Santa Fe with Kathy to set up to be in the conference and give our talks. And when we walked into the room that they had for us, there was, right in front of my eyes, there was a shelf, and there was a stone on the shelf. And it was one of these stones. And I thought, what's that? What is that stone? I had never seen one just like that before.
Yeah.
And so, I held it up to my heart. And as I did that, immediately there were these soft, curving currents of energy that went into my chest and circulated around my heart. And I felt very much a sense of love energy circulating in there. It was very peaceful. It was like kind of nurturing and nourishing, and it felt feminine in tone. And I felt like this is the stone of Sophia. Like, of course, in a way.
Right.
Synchronously, I arrived at the conference dedicated to Sophia to talk about stones and the new consciousness. And right on the, who knows how it got there, but on the shelf, as soon as I walked into my room, was a stone that seemed to embody the energetic properties that I would associate with the divine feminine wisdom being, the soul of the world, Sophia. So I felt as though this stone was animated by that energy, and that energy was available to people through this stone. And it was so exciting to me to have that happen. I'd been focusing a lot on trying to understand how stones in general are emanations of the consciousness of the earth itself, that is to say, the soul of the world.
Yes.
And so I was thinking, so much about that to then arrive at the conference and discover right on the shelf in my room a new stone that I'd never seen, that then went straight to the heart, which is where we connect with the world soul. And felt exactly like I might have imagined that being would feel, and even like I remembered the feeling of Sophia from my dreams.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that happened just in that one few moments there when I first arrived at the conference. And of course I thought, wow, I wonder if this stone, maybe it's local because it's on the shelf here in Santa Fe. I've got to go out in the canyons and see if there's any more.
Yes.
So Kathy and I went out and searched, and we found 100 of them.
Mm-hmm.
It took several hours, and we had to dig around a lot, but we found 100 of these stones. And we came back and we put 100 stones on one on each of the chairs in the conference room, so that everybody that took my workshop and my talk, listened to my talk, would actually have one of these stones to work with during the talk.
Oh, wow.
And so that was a brand new thing. It was something I'd never done before, where when I'm teaching about stones, I don't offer everybody a stone I've never worked with and say, let's all do this.
Yes.
But that's what we did. And it was a beautiful thing because many of the people, most of whom had never worked with crystals energetically, because they were coming for the whole set of things that the conference was offering.
Right.
But many of them, more than half, could feel the energy of the stone circulating around their heart.
Wow. That's amazing.
And when we did a meditation with it, a number of them had experiences of connecting with Sophia. So it was a very strong moment that demonstrated the reality of what was going on with these stones. And of course, I don't know, this is one of the mysteries to me, I don't know whether the stones were always sitting there emanating this energy, or whether the soul of the world was aware of all this consciousness focused on her.
Right.
All these people coming together to try to connect with her in all the different ways they could.
Right.
And maybe she infused the stones, right for that time.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's a wild idea, because I think the assumption has been with crystals, every crystal, whatever its energies are, has always had them.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've begun to wonder about is whether that is always true, or whether it may be that stones get activated or animated for various reasons, having to do with the way that consciousness, either of people or of the spiritual beings, focuses on them.
Yes. Yes, and I want to say about that I've wondered the same thing about stones in general. Have they always held that energy, and what is the relationship between the stone and us and that interaction? I do feel like there's a lot of stones that I felt like have come available and into the world, and a lot of them through heaven and earth actually, with a specific purpose similar to this, with a purpose, with a theme, with a poignancy to the time that is really a good demonstration, I think, of co-creation and synchronicity and right timing, and it keeps happening, and I've found stones just out in the world at shows, or people will bring them to me in a similar way. So there is an incredible power to that co-creative aspect of the relationship to stones, and I think that this is one of the really clear stories of that I've heard from you.
I think so too, and I think I'm really glad you put the focus on that, because in actuality, even though there's not a good way to get a concept around it, what I think is going on, rather than causality, rather than that, the focus of people caused this, or rather than the soul of the world caused this energy to become present in these stones, I feel it was a co-creative thing even in that the intention and consciousness on both sides is what allows the thing to happen.
Right.
So that's just my own feeling about it, but it's a strong feeling.
And I do feel that in among that, there's also, with different stones, I felt like there's times when they awaken, like maybe there was something latent in these stones or other stones as well that wasn't as active if you would have picked it up 50 or 100 years ago. And that's a hypothesis that, again, I have no way to know.
No, we need a time machine.
But it feels that way quite often.
Yeah.
Like it's these stones are awake now. you know.
That's what I sense too. So I think maybe I'll say a little more at this point about what the stone is physically,
Yes.
and then how its energetic properties work or what they're like.
Yes.
So physically, Rosophia is pink feldspar, white quartz, and black biotite all mixed together in the same rock. It is found in some quantities, like it's sparse relatively in New Mexico, northern New Mexico, but we did find 100 stones there.
Yeah.
And then on northward into Colorado, there's more. So it's a stone that, there's little deposits of it in various places in the American western states.
Right.
And we went and gathered these stones ourselves. We didn't. That's one of the differences with this stone, is it's not something that we found that somebody had mined and we bought it from them. We actually gathered all of these stones.
Right.
And then we went and we went to our cutters and made various things like the wands and the heart shapes and the tumbled stones and spheres and so forth.
Yes.
And we make beads as well, and jewelry and all that sort of thing with it, because this is a stone that's really good to have on your body.
Right.
Having it on your body, especially in or near the heart chakra, that's what I like best with this stone, because I feel like that's the strongest place of resonance
Yes.
in us with Rosophia. And I should say the name, I named it because we were at that conference dedicated to Sophia, and Rosophia means the rose of Sophia. And the rose has always been a symbol of the heart. So in a sense, I'm saying this stone is a conduit for the energy of the heart of Sophia.
Yes.
And that's also because the love energy of this stone is so prominent.
Wow. Well, do you want to mention the sleep stone aspect of this?
Yeah, absolutely, I will. There's a couple of things. One thing I wanted to say is, the fundamental quality of Rosophia, as I see it, is the earth's consciousness and the earth's emotional or feeling consciousness reaching up through us. The earth's love, you might say. And it becomes present in our heart when we connect with this stone and we become aware of it, and that whole quality of love energy in us can be magnified through the resonance of our own love interrelating with the love of the soul of the earth. And what I also feel about this is that, we named our company Heaven and Earth a long time ago because our idea is that the heavenly world and the earthly world were meant to become one. That's the destiny that we're all intending towards and working towards.
Yes.
And so what you get in Rosophia is a kind of emanation of the earth's energy reaching up to meet the heaven energy.
Yes.
And that happens within us.
Right.
That happens within us when we make ourselves available to this energy and to the higher frequency energies from above, so to speak.
Right.
And azestulite is the stone, white azestulite, but all the azestulites is the stone that are the stones that most beautifully make that connection of heaven and earth joining together. If you work with the two, if you work with azestulite and Rosophia together, you get that high vibration energy that goes through your upper chakras, coming down into the body, and you get from the Rosophia the earthly energy reaching up from below, and in your heart is where they tend to meet. When you have both stones and you're handling them both or wearing them both. So one of the things I like to do when I want to demonstrate it to people is I like to ask them to wear, just for a few minutes, a Rosophia necklace like this, and tune in and feel what it's like. And very often, 80-90% of the time, if a person is sensitive at all, they do feel that love energy and they feel it heart-centered. And they feel it coming up through the feet quite often. Now, I have them take that off and feel an azestulite necklace, and they definitely tend to feel that high vibration up here and see light like you associate in all the experiences of heavenly revelation. It's always about light.
Yes.
So when you put them both on, when I ask people to put them both on, they do feel a melding of those two things in the heart, in the area of the heart.
Right.
So
Wow.
that to me is really, I mean, it's a big thing, you know,
Right.
for people who want to work spiritually with stones. This and the Zeshalite together is kind of like the very crux of the fundamental gesture that we can make to help the spiritual energies do what they want to do in the world,
Right.
which is to say, heaven and earth join together and become one.
Beautiful.
So that's, you know, I just had to go into that because to me that's the most important thing about Rosophia, especially when you pair it with his Eschalite.
Yeah.
Now we'll talk about the sleep thing if you want me to.
Yeah, just because it's a fascinating thing. I mean, we have people asking us regularly about stones that can help them with, insomnia or sleep issues. And, not to say that it's a prescription, but you found some interesting things with some of these stones.
Well, I had a period of getting a little bit of insomnia myself within the first, few months of having this stone around after we came back from the conference. It wasn't terrible insomnia, but it was the kind of thing where you might lie awake for an hour or something and too many thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this Rosophia stone. In fact, I had the very one that I brought back from the shelf in the retreat center. And I tried sleeping with it. Not really to help my insomnia, but just to soothe my emotions. Because that quality of emotional nurturing was already the main thing I had noticed from the stone, or one of the main things. So I held it, and I felt the currents move into my heart. And then not long after that, the whole body started to calm down, and the currents began circulating through my whole body. And then I was asleep. And, I woke up the next morning feeling really good, really not just full of energy, but full of a sweetness that I ascribed to the connection of my body and heart with the stone, what it was offering.
Yes.
So, after that I did it a few more times, and it definitely helped me relax every time I wanted to go to sleep. And there were the side benefits of sometimes I would wake up and in the middle of the night I would feel an energetic kind of communion going between the stone and my heart. And I would just sleep on my side with the stone sort of cuddled up to my chest. And I still do that. I do it pretty often. There's not another stone that is, to me, as soothing and as sort of gentle and love-saturated as Rosophia.
Yes.
So we tried it on other people. We had other people who wanted to sleep with the stone, to help them sleep or to relax. Try this stone, and I've gotten really good reports on that.
Yes.
And too, because the customers tell you.
Yeah, exactly. And I experienced it myself. I mean, I really connected with these, bigger handheld stones and could really feel that energy that you're describing. It was sort of my entry into feeling this energy, and it is amazing. And it's sort of slow to begin, but then it just sort of fills.
Yeah.
Is what it feels like. And it's such a, like as you said, a sweet, nurturing kind of energy.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, I even have had one instance of a friend who was very badly depressed and was like thinking, what can I do with it about the depression? And so me telling this story is not trying to tell people, well, this is the answer to depression. But in this case, my friend went home and slept with one of these and woke up the next morning and was clear. Like it wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And I was astonished by that. But, I was just trying to help my friend by saying, well, I don't know what... She said, what stone can you offer me? And so I offered her this and said, it's peaceful and it feels loving in the heart and it helps me sleep.
Right.
But she called me the next day and told me that I'm not depressed anymore. So I do encourage people who want to work with stones spiritually for those sorts of issues to experiment with it if they're drawn to.
Yes.
Not a panacea, but maybe a help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, any last things that you'd like to share about Rosophia before we close?
Sure. A couple of things. One thing that people often want to know is what stones work well with this stone.
Oh, yes.
And as you might imagine, stones that are heart-oriented and, sort of have that love energy harmonize really well with this. So petalite, the gemstone, is a really good one for this.
Right.
It works well, of course, with all the azeztulites because there is that heaven and earth meeting. That's probably the primary one I recommend to work with Rosophia.
Right.
When people want to ground the energy more, like say they're working with azeztulite and Rosophia and they feel like they want that maybe they're a little too spacey because the influence of azeztulite affects them so strongly.
Right.
Then to get a stone like Master Shamanite, or even a black tourmaline or a black obsidian, like the Midnight Obsidian.
Right.
But Master Shamanite is the one I've worked with the most, and there I like to use a triad: azeztulite, Rosophia, and Master Shamanite.
Right.
And you can wear them together, carry them in the pocket together, or even use them in a layout. And in a layout, you would use the azeztulite up high, either there or both, the Rosophia on the heart, and the Master Shamanite down at the root chakra.
Right.
And that's a good combination for people who, like as I said, the issue is more an issue of grounding. And of course, grounding the heavenly energy so that it can join with the earth's energy is the point. We don't want to go flying off.
Yes.
Really, that's not really the best use of what we can do,
Yes.
from my perspective. So there's that. And then, of course, Rosophia works really well with moldavite, which kind of speeds up and intensifies its properties. It works well with the new stone Azumar.
Yes.
There is, in that case, there's this love energy mixed with this rejoicing quality that the Azumar has. So that's another important combination from my perspective.
Yes, and healerite is an interesting combination with it
Absolutely, and that'll the synergy of those two takes the sort of nurturing quality of Rosophia and blends it with the healing influence, meaning reaching toward wholeness and balance that healerite emanates, and blending those energies together. So
Yes.
that's another thing that I like the idea of doing. And of course, I encourage people to experiment.
Yes.
But the main thing is find a way to center yourself in your own heart and make yourself available to what this stone offers. Hold one of these over your heart and just open yourself to that communion. Invite the stone's image into your heart and imagine, because imagination is the doorway to a lot of these experiences. It's not the fullness of it, but it's a way to begin the process.
Yes.
Imagine that image of the stone in your heart, and imagine, even if you want to, going a little further in imagining the flow of whatever the stone is offering, and invite it. You're dealing not only with an object, in my view of this, but with a being.
Yes.
So invitation is important. Invitation to the stone being an offering of yourself in relationship. And when that's done, the results can be really gratifying and quite surprising. So I think that's what I got to tell you today about Rosophia.
Well, I really love this story and everything that's come out of it. So I think it's an important stone. And it's always interesting to hear what people's experience is of it as well.
Yeah.
So we encourage people, if they do, get some, play with it, let us know what your experience is. Because that's an important part of the whole circuit.
I agree.
So thank you, Robert, for talking with us today. And if you want to know more about Rosophia, find everything that you see here, you can go to heavenandearthjewelry.com. Thank you.
Thanks for watching.